cover crop seeding methods.
Well, thank you, Jennifer, for the invitation to come down and visit with you guys. Always good to help our friends out at Maryland and Delaware. But here to talk today about cover crop seeding techniques. And there's been a lot of innovation in cover crop tactics, and I got this slide from one of our farmers the other day, and so we're going to talk a little bit about the variations in innovations that are going on and how you might think about whether they have a fit in your neck of the woods. And one of the equipment developments, use of old equipment. This guy, we'll find out later in our presentation, he got a Valmar air for some reason, and then he decided he wanted to try it out on his tractor and sow cover crops in his 30-inch soybeans, and he got a good stand using it. So he's a small farmer but innovator, and something work using it. There's a lot of interesting principles behind what he's doing, even though it might look like small potatoes from this perspective. So there's a lot of work by Penn State and other universities in the Atlantic region, even up into the Kansas, that's going on. There's a lot of
if I go out to a machine to calibrate it, first thing I'm doing is getting the moisture correct on it.
Different works and things to consider.
Probably not.
Obviously, a difference in the length of growing season and how much time you have after your crop is harvested, right? And we're going to
tester.
Up here in Quebec,
that's all.
to Quebec, between Montreal and Quebec City along the St. Lawrence River, but it's kind of like the eastern shore of Canada. I'm surprised at the intensive crop production in that area. It's flat, not well drained, but lots of corn and lots of hogs. And they have water quality problems. They got ditches that run into the St. Lawrence. And just like our government, the Canadian government's after them controlling runoff and leaching. And then we have wide range in precipitation in summer. It doesn't get that dry.
I take it as hard as the combine will take it, which most.
I know in Virginia, North Carolina, it gets really hot and dry in August. You know, so you have lots of drought stress. So what works for those guys is not going to work for our friends to the south. And you guys and us in Pennsylvania are in between a little. Then we also have different kinds of crops we're growing. There's full season corn and soybeans up there.
So what you said about having differences in moisture,
you
almost have. You need to do a calibration.
Wheat that's not double cropped.
Below.
Is for in our cropping system. We got different levels of crop residue. In northern PA, where I hang out sometimes, 150, 140 bushel corn is common. And some of you guys are in other areas, 200, 225 bushel corn. And there's a world of difference in the amount of residue that's produced, right? And then this is in tillage systems. Some areas are completely vertical. Some do vertical tillage. At Quebec, they do a lot of chisel in conventional tillage.
Really?
So we all these potential of different strategies. Right? All that in mind. Up in Quebec, they're actually pretty sophisticated leaders in cover crop. And you'll find if
I jump up on the screen, do the
call it in Quebec, doing something like using spinner spreaders or other ground-driven air spreaders to spread ryegrass in corn at the V3 to V5 stage, and it works for them. They have a cool environment. They got minimal drought, and they got wet soils and a limited time for establishment in the fall. So they're not going to be doing some of the stuff you do. They got mostly tilled systems, and this system works for them. We found this system also works for us for organic corn growers in our area who are
there's
doing
questions on what to do after of this. I don't want to get into that.
Nation,
I'm a
ryegrasser, and in that kind of setting, if we get a little rain,
decision on it is absolutely so.
an example
What we've seen new this year,
I've been seeing from them in the last 3 or 4 years,
so it's
and one of the issues they have to worry about is their pre-emergence herbicide program. So they've come up with a number of short residual programs, using stuff like Verdict, Sharpen, Outlook.
you're started with their ag.
Claim they're getting
So that platform carries across.
running it with Tillage.
So now, collecting all the information on the USB stick that's in your monitor.
Grass in their cropping system. In our area, we sort of been working on our interseeder. We're also, it seems to work well in environments like New York, Vermont, Pennsylvania. A little different than yours, maybe cooler environments, moderate drought potential, and time for establishment in the fall after grain crops this time of year.
Have things get billed correctly.
Area, their corn this week. But we have a lot of note, unlike the guys in Quebec,
Through cracks.
till. So broadcasting the seed on the surface is not that effective. So we found that getting some seed to soil contact helps us out. Another thing we've come up with to try to defray the cost of doing it and is the possibility of while you're going across the field, like on nitrogen or spraying a post-nitrogen.
Here, I'm a big fan of pull that USB hand in here.
Their concept to keep in the back of your, whenever you can do two things at one time, multifunction.
$5. Why would you even try and copy data, save data, erase the card, put it back in there?
Here's an example in northern PA. Big dairies up on the New York border. No time to drill rye in the fall. It doesn't grow that.
They have a life.
Late June, got a ryegrass catch, persisted through their crop. This is maybe a 130 bushel corn crop they grow. And then in the fall, in this time of year, October, this was October, they got a green, so they just spread
A lot of
thousands of gallons of dairy manure. Now instead of bare stubble, he's got a green grass. And utilize that liquid dairy manure.
Yeah, you're storing your information on a server somewhere.
Also, we've gotten a few interseeders that have worked their way to
Happen.
places with similar environments. This guy is out in South Dakota. He's saying that we have a hard time getting winter cover in our field unless we're growing wheat. We grow a lot of corn and soybeans. For a soil perspective, we'd love to have that green winter cover. And he bought an interseeder last year, did a mix of ryegrass, radish, and red clover, shelled 229 bushels of corn, and got a nice catch. His neighbors in that area are affiliated with Ducks Unlimited. They bought his interseeder this year. He got another one, and they're looking at creating wildlife habitat.
Yep.
In the corn stalk. So they've had some success this year with the interseeder in creating that. So another thing is looking for other values of the cover crops besides soil protection. That are also other benefits of the cover crop
What harvest?
there. And the public appreciates that. Another adaptation on a Pennsylvania farmer, his name's Virtual. He called me last year and said, Greg, we got something similar to the interseeder we're doing you might be interested in. They're hog farmers, and they rigged up a interseeding apparatus on the back of their manure spreader. This has got his Gandhi where, and he's doing he's spreading hog manure during a period when he's not usually spreading hog manure in June, and he's taking advantage of some of the environmental applications of that manure application, trying to establish a cover crop, and maybe experiencing a yield bump. And Virgil's been in touch with a guy from Ohio State, and here's an example of what he sent me as some of the success he had this year. Virgil's been in touch with a guy from Ohio State who's there.
Traditionally, there have been
Research has a lot of environmental issues, just like we do. Lake Erie has turned green in western Ohio.
different.
Some of the researchers out there have attributed it to fall and winter applications.
When they yield information, once it comes into that display, it's a lot.
And in no-till crops, applications in the wintertime. So we got another way to get nutrients out there in the landscape that are not subject to runoff. And that's a real big thing for them. So Glenn's been looking at injected manure, pre-emergence, or even side dress, and in-season applications of manure. And one thing, he shared these slides with me. He's been doing it for now. He's getting higher yields with this. These are post-emergent. He's getting about a 20 bushel yield kick from incorporating swine manure, like Virgil's doing, compared to incorporating UAN side dress. I can't completely vouch for the procedures. Big spread to me. But it does suggest that maybe there's some potential kick, similar rates of N applied as UAN versus in-season manure applications. And that's what Virgil has seen. And that's one thing that intrigues him. And he wants to combine that again with a cover crop establishment. Glenn also and so the manure is applied in the summer, not in the winter. And as you know, in the summertime, it's not that subject to runoff or leaching because the corn crop is growing, protecting that soil. So the environmental advantage is also there. Yield bump and potential.
Foot off of that pedal. You're burning the clutch up, and if it fails,
nitrogen
we're under warranty.
The bushels where he doesn't have any nitrogen on. Again, I haven't been involved in research details.
By the same.
It's interesting though. Also talking away in Ohio, they like we've had some years, they had unusual weather conditions. 2012, they were part of the big Midwest drought, and the incorporated manure had a benefit compared to the and then in 2000 when they had the very wet year out there. So he's thinking that the UN is more subject to loss. I'm a little skeptical of the data that not enough UAN, but the guy's an ag engineer. He works at Ohio State. He's been doing it 5 years in a row. It's hard for me to believe that he's not calibrating these pounds of nitrogen as UAN.
Yep.
I'd be interested in seeing data like this on the potential of in-season manure applications. The other doing out there, they have a conference like this in March in Western Ohio I've been to and saw his presentation. But they do dragline applications of manure to standing. Another slide he has is where you take a water tanker, like we up in Pennsylvania and Ohio, you have these big water tankers that are used
to buy a new truck. They want to
you fill that up with liquid hog manure, haul it out to the edge of the field, and then the drag line drags behind your tractor as you go across the field, spreading manure. And that could either be incorporated or just spread on.
For whatever reason, because we operate.
Drag line is, if you've got the corn crop emerged already, the drag line is going to drag over the corn, which makes me cringe a lot. But Glenn is he's on V1, V2, V corn with that drag line running across it, and he says the corn has about V4 to V5 stage before that drag line the corn.
Activity, and that
To
being able to,
a drag line across your cornfield,
it's just
got to
more
talk to you about it.
just
I'm hesitant about
machines.
it is something that you could do to get
We're
when everybody else is shut down because they got small corn growing in their field. So that's the whole point of the Ohio State research program and what Virgil is trying to do with the interseeding process on top of it. So another one that's been kind of interesting, a couple of guys showed up at Penn State one day, and they were three brothers. Two of them came. One was a dairy farmer from western New York, and the other guy was an environmental engineer. The third guy was at Carnegie Mellon out in Pittsburgh, and Carnegie Mellon is big into robotics in agriculture. They've worked with technology on some things, and they developed something. These guys developed something called the robot. Has anybody heard of the robot at all? So the robot is a remote control vehicle that runs up and down the corn rows and could do late season operations that you might be interested in. It could apply fertilizer or it could apply cover crop seed. So they're trying to develop a business around the robot. It sounds a little wacky, but you might have seen that the first autonomous truck developed recently by Canada. And probably robotics and autonomous operations are going to be part of the discussion we have here 30 years from now. When our replacements are all sitting here, there's going to be autonomous things going on. It's just like if you would have talked to me in college about, have you ever thought about being a programmer for Google? I would have said, what's Google? What's the internet? You know? So as you think about the future, it could be a lot different than what we're talking about today. So maybe the start of something in the autonomous world. And this is kind of what it looks like. They got a machine where they got a demo on their site where it's driving through pretty heavy mud and stuff like that. So it's a pretty tough little gizmo. It's got GPS on it and, again, different kinds of applications. They're working with a couple other people, too. This is at University of Minnesota, and they're applying cereal rye on September 1st, and it looks like they had some success there. They're right there down on the ground, broadcasting crop type of thing. 2 weeks, that's 2 weeks after your application. Now, there's other robotics out there. I don't know if any camera by Defense Research Agency, and the EATR, Energy Autonomous Tactical Robot. If what the Army wanted is a pick up pieces of residue and put it into its energy, its fuel tank, and use those for fuel. So I'm thinking that I took all science classes with me about using the robot with the eater and coming up with an autonomous cover crop seeder that would actually pick up the corn residue, eat the corn residue as it was going through the field, and the weird thing, but all the technology to do that. It's just a matter of getting the Chinese to make one, right, that we could afford. No. It's deploying it, so that's kind of a cool thing that could be. That's a little bit, I thought you might enjoy some of that. Back to reality a little bit. A common way a lot of areas have been working with to try to get some cover crops out there has been aerial seeding with aircraft or helicopters, and these in like late August or prior to leaf drop in soybeans, and these have had some success. Just thinking I'm ready to write them off, someone along and says we've had some good success. You might have had good success. At Penn State, we have about a 2,000-acre farm out campus, and our guys are environmentally conscious, and They spent 5 years trying to do seeding,
Around us.
and they told me, Greg, we abandoned it when we had about a 25% success rate.
Been using
And it was sort of dependent mostly on the precipitation following
spray.
application. So usually September in our area, the ground is dry and hard, and it takes a pretty good rain. Maybe our particular soil conditions, are not conducive. Maybe in other areas, you get that more frequent rainfall right around that time or near harvest to make that happen. So, but we, at least in our area, we had troubles. That's why we kind of looked at the interseeder as a option. There's still a fair amount of aerial applications done with some success in our state, so it has some potential. And a related one that folks are looking at are ground applications in standing corn. So my colleague up in Vermont is Heather Darby, and she got a CIG grant from NRCS. She was able to purchase several different things, including a Hagee applicator for going in-season crops in their silage corn. Vermont has a lot of water issues in Lake Champlain. There's a lot of rich folks that have nice cabins along the lake, and then the lake turns green and in the summer sometimes, and they get very ag community about runoff in the lake. So they're really, Heather and her team are really under the gun to find some things that are working in their silage corn systems. Summarizing the results, the early thing I heard from their guys is they were having trouble getting establishment in high yielding silage corn up there this year with their outfit. But other areas may have some more potential. You wouldn't have quite the crop interception of the seed with the Hagee, and I think I saw some innovations that Hagee had where they actually had something on the tube that would actually cause some soil disturbance that would run through the field and try to get a little soil to seed contact. And if they actually have a YouTube video showing their whole research, giving similar talk to what I'm doing here from their perspective.
At a cut width, you're getting accurate
Video.
yields.
Here they are going through the field. The seed is applied, air delivery through the tubes down into the crop canopy. Another one that's common in Pennsylvania is post-harvest drilling, and there's emergence and good soil to seed contact. In some areas, we've got enough growing season to make this happen. Pennsylvania, we already have the drills. We're using existing equipment, and then we have a multitude of seed options that we can do. And probably one big is the drilling is especially good for use of when we're trying to use the cover crop for forage. That's where we want to have a high density uniform stand. So if we're growing or
At this point,
most of it's drilled like that. And one question mark for the drilling, though, is when you get into heavy residue corn, 200 bushel or so, then it becomes more challenging to get a nice uniform stand. So it's much slower than some of the other systems we'll talk about. The more rapid system, I think is more common down this way, is a ground application, post-harvest broadcast with some of our more sophisticated spreading equipment. If you don't have this equipment, then distribution of the seed with a spinner spreader, as they're notoriously uneven, so distribution of the seed is not going to be nearly as nice as it could be. So that's one thing to be thinking about. You could, if you want, the idea of the interseeder was dual purpose, do two things at one time.
use for small operations. I think that's a big thing.
Fertilizer and seed at the same time. and save a trip across the field. When you just broadcast and when the seed lays out there, one of the issues is if you got a dry fall, kind of like we have this year, then your emergence and development of the small grain crop can be delayed. And I think one of the things my counterparts at Delaware and Maryland are looking at is, and we are too, is how can we maximize
It's outside,
this cover crop in the future,
nano cloud,
forage or whatever, it's
same vein, you want
is not producing the most effective crop that we'd like to see. So figuring out ways to overcome that would be an issue. Our way, I'd also be working on winter kill. We're a little tougher winter, and the crop's not getting.
We'll import-export shape files with no problem. And you've got deer that has their.
Could take out some of our seedlings as well. Another modification on that would be to apply the cover crop while you're harvesting. I think a lot of combine operators don't want to fuss with doing more than just cutting the crop, but some folks have gone to the extent of modifying their combine, especially if they have one of those. We have another farmer that has one of those air seeders, and they designed a little rig to have a little trailer behind the soybean head with a blower on the run off the combine that blows air into the seeder, and then the seed is taken out under the combine and dispersed at regular intervals, so when they're cutting soybeans, they're putting down rye seed at the same time. So too early to tell how well theirs is working. It's been dry up our way, and rye seed is still, hopefully it'll get moving.
It might.
So on the combine is another option with some benefits and pros and cons, as you might think. Another addition that's been popular down this way has been to combine that custom application of rye seed with the equipment with a vertical till operation. So there, now all of a sudden, instead of having that rye seed sit on the surface, you get some soil to seed contact and you get germination. In addition, you do some processing of the corn stalks. So if processing of the chopping corn stalks was part of your program, it's common in some parts of Pennsylvania, then doing this method of cover crop seeding would eliminate the need to chop the corn stalks. This is fairly standard equipment in some areas. It gives some pretty good consistent stands. And I'm not that familiar with it actually, because we don't do it up our way very much. But I'd be wondering about would this help with the slug problem that you might see in planting beans in a heavy residue field. I know we've had some places in PA where you have persistent in corn, and they've come in with spring vertical tillage as a way to really knock the population back. So this could be a thing to add to our list of reasons why this might be an interesting option. And then another variation on would be to get your seeder and put it on the till machine, and then
the feature
eliminate the pass of the broadcast seeder, and you could do it in one thing. And there you need the there you need to purchase the machine to go onto your
for your buck. Buck.
To skin the cat has many of the same potential benefits. I'd say your seed capacity on something like this might be a little bit less
for that TV
than it would be on that truck. So that'd be something to think about. You'd have to refill more often, but it's not a. And this showed up at our Ag Progress Days this year, this rig. So I know these guys are marketing and very interested in this kind of concept. So some of the my colleagues in the area have been doing work on maximizing how to maximize the benefits of some of these systems. Amy Schober here at University of Delaware did some work and has an ongoing grant looking at the use of the turbo till and broadcast method, I think, compared to drilling. And the question mark is, does the turbo till method, I guess, let's say vertical tillage, turbo till is a trade name sort of thing, disking work as well as the drilling for doing cover crops. And what about the rate? So in this particular one she shared with me last year, she's looking at a bushel versus 2 bushels of wheat, and it looks to me like October 1st, they got a nice, this is probably in November, they got a nice catch with the 2 bushel seeding rate, which I think is kind of a recommended rate. And probably, I would say that was acceptable. And one thing that Amy's looking at is the, now on October 31st, you get, as you might expect, you get a lot, much less vegetative growth, probably more need for that 120-pound rate, or maybe even a little bit more to get the kind of cover crop that you want to provide the ecosystem services that we expect from it. And also Bob Cradaville, many of you know Bob, he's also worked on this. Bob shared with me a few slides. He's looking at drilled wheat and disked or vertical till wheat here. And one thing I'm seeing, not a lot of difference in growth and development between the two. When you get down to something broadcast wheat or rye, then you have that phenomenon where they're not growing so well. This guy's right on the soil surface here. He might not survive the winter. And then Bob was also showing the thing where you had the drilled wheat later, which has a little bit less development. Also, as part of Bob's studies, he compared the turbo till with 1 or 2 passes to the drilling. One issue we have, it's in Pennsylvania, I assume it's here, but if you have the government, then turbo till is actually considered tillage. So that gives it sort of, that takes it out of the equation for some farmers, even though there's quite a bit of residue. A concern is doing multiple turbo till passes and then reducing the residue a lot. So Bob did a study where he compared these 3. Do you need 1 or 2 passes, and how does it do compared to drilling? And here's a picture, 2 turbo tills on barley. He did barley, wheat, and rye. Here's 2 turbo tills on barley. Here's drilled barley, and here's 1 turbo till on barley. You'd almost say that 1 turbo till on barley looks more dense on that. Then Bob collected some population stuff and actually found equivalent or even higher populations in both barley and sometimes wheat with the vertical till 1-pass system. He didn't gain much by going to 2 passes, and he didn't gain much by going to 2.5 bushels on the crops either. So Bob's conclusion is vertical, for cover crop purposes, a broadcast followed by vertical till is going to get you pretty much in the ballpark, or maybe even a little better than drilling. So that's interesting. And now he went and took some of these to grain yield, and he found that he was not quite getting the yield, the grain yield, out of crops that were,
for you as a service provider, going
recording about a 10% yield hit with the vertical tilled wheat in barley. And he
you could be off.
This is probably adequate, and and thinking that instead of thinking about pounds per acre, we should probably be thinking about seeds per square foot.
Display on, he doesn't have to.
Barley and malting barley, if you get into malting barley, that's particularly critical because malting barley varieties have big seeds. So if you put 2 bushels of malting barley down, you're not going to get the same amount of seed as what you might have thought. So we learned that last year, bumped our seeding up to a higher poundage because of the large seed size. So he's saying that for the best planting techniques are drilled or broadcast to incorporate with vertical tillage. But like I said, tillage isn't for everyone. So you might, on those fields, you might be doing just broadcast or drilling. Broadcast, if you need to cover, because of your regulations, need to cover a lot of ground, that can be an option. You know, people talk, I don't know what you're doing down here, but people in
It's going to
talk about bumping up the seed.
so
20 years.
there's a benefit, I think.
Try to get a little better stand with the germination issues that you might get. Now, a couple years back, I had the opportunity to talk to my counterpart at NC State, and he was telling me he was all interested in narrow row wheat. And way back in my career, I
You got a bounded field, you pull into it, that display knows what field it's in.
actually find sometimes a little benefit to going narrower than 7 inches on wheat and getting a little bump of 5 or 10 bushels to the acre. And he was telling me that some of our North Carolina farmers doing the vertical till system, they're winning the North Carolina wheat yield contest. And he thinks it's because they have
On the side.
more uniform distribution and they're simulating a narrow row system.
Excuse me.
Which if you looked at Bob's pictures, you might think that's possible because it did look like he had a more dense canopy in the fall than he did with the drilled wheat. Now Bob wasn't able to show that in his research. Maybe the farmers in North Carolina are smarter than we thought, you know. But they're doing something special. So Randy and his guys, county agents down there in North Carolina, they've been doing some evaluation of just what we're talking about, the drilled wheat, the broadcast with the vertical till incorporation, compared to also planting with a 15-inch planter. And in this one, they got just about what Bob was talking about, a 10% yield hit with the broadcast and till.
Up and talk.
In other words, they couldn't replicate kind of what some of the leading farmers were talking about. Then in 2015, they did another one, and they got 90 bushels with the drill system and 85 with the broadcast. What they also tried in 2014 was bumping the seeding rate in the broadcast one to see if they could see if that was a tactic. So it might be possible to achieve similar yields. Maybe some farmers know, or you guys know how to do that. But the data that we're seeing come out looks like it's not a total washout by any means. 100 bushel, 85 bushel wheat with the vertical till system. So they're doing a pretty good job. And many of our farmers would go for that any day. But
400 acres now.
compared to a good drilled stand, they might be giving up something unless you do some special. There's some comparison. I'm not going to go through this. You could probably imagine what the pros and cons and best environment are based on what we've been talking about. That's the kind of thought process you have to go through. If somebody calls you up and says, geez, I saw the guys in Quebec are just broadcasting ryegrass on my corn. Don't you think we could do that here in Delaware? When you could tell the process might be an adopted different technique. So in summary, some things we realize is that cover cropping practices vary depending on those several factors we talked about across the Northeast. I think like a lot of us have learned, if you can use existing equipment or multi-purpose equipment, that's going to reduce cost. And use that vertical till machine.
How bad it was.
Bring anything, you got it around, it's a good thing to have. If you can do something like we do with the interseeder, do things.
Head on this field because 30.
Well, what we're talking about for people doing there, spreading hog manure, sowing a cover crop, harvesting corn. and also multiple benefits
Never determine how much,
incorporated,
so.
reducing summer runoff from the manure,
Complete and total gadget person. I love
creating a food plot for your deer hunting
looking at,
plot, they're all things we should be thinking about. And then if you want to do tactics from another region, then you might have to do some other management. You might have to, if you want to, you might have to do it earlier in the season. You might have to use a lower corn population or something like that. That's how you would have something from another region to our region. And the other thing is keep an open mind, because there's going to be a lot of innovations during many of your careers. And what we saw, robotics operate, sound like they're way out there, but they're probably coming along. The world will be different at the end of your career. So with that, Jen, your nice attention.